So down and da, ne and gasa went, ne so zito wa ni gyaso. Onun the wa got ni wa going zo there, ne ko ne ton the one day ni drogeno, ne why ne genya there. Down and da, then ne doen dasto ni ne hotan the one day, ne honon towny honon the esta qua gayaso ne drogyo de. Dat kai nene kiestani nene henondi esta nene onunda wa ga goano ni wai nenge when isa se ani nene de guanonio nene iswaya dinyo do nonko nene ungoya do yista ni wai nene ngachonyano do di guano nene onunda wa ga goano ne kone ngwe onwe ka nene ondon when is hadenyo done it honeo down nene ngwani going. So just to introduce myself a little bit here. My name is Sodzitzo. On the program it's Damian Webster, and I'm Tonawanda Seneca from Western New York. I always have to specify Western New York because when I say New York, people think I'm from New York City. But that's way on the other side of the state. So I'm Turtle Clan. I work at Tonawanda. The program that I work for is called Hanon Towny Hanonde Estahqua. They're making a path. We have a pre-K through third grade program, and then I also teach the adult language program. They're in their second week right now. I had to ditch out on them to come down here for the conference, but they're in good hands. So I mentioned that I'm just going to tell as much as I can about documentation for the future. We kind of just needed a placeholder for our presentations, and this kind of took on a life of its own, so we're going to get going. Actually, before we get started, those of you that are physically able to, deswadat. Down there, ne what? They sent your egg. They sent your egg. They sent your egg. On there, ne what? Sound and yet. They sent your egg. They sent your egg. Sound and yet. On there, ne what? They sent out squag. They sent out squag. They sent your egg. Sound and yet. Oh, ne hoso. So we got to get the blood flowing a little bit in between presentations. I'm right before lunch and I can't have you guys falling asleep during my presentation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about documentation as much as I can. There's so much to cover when it comes to the future of our languages. Okay, so what is language documentation? Our people have been documenting our languages and our stories for generations. So when we think of like contemporary documentation, there's something that has come before even that. And you can see on the screen, we have various ways of documentation. We have cave paintings. There's a Lakota winter count. That was the way they marked their winters. I think a lot of us, when we talk about how old we are, I've noticed a lot of people in your language, it says how many winters you've crossed. So, back in the day, winters were the harshest time of the year. Food could run low. There's a lot of things that could happen in the winter time. So if you could cross another winter and not pass away and not, be subdued by the elements, that was a big thing. So there's a winter count right there. On the side of that is a wampum belt, the Onondaga wampum belt. That's a mnemonic device to tell a whole story, a whole narrative. That winter count is a whole story and a narrative of what they've gone through. The cave painting tells a story. This stick right here is an invitation stick. When you take that stick to go invite other longhouses, there's a whole message that goes with that. And you take that with you in your mind, and you stand up in front of people and you deliver that message. So to me, that's a form of documentation too. You're delivering a message. So instead, I'm not reading a book though, but I'm carrying a message when you take that stick, if you use any of these devices. So this is a way that our people documented things. We're in Pueblo country here, Navajo country, and Apache country. But when I think of Popeye and the Pueblo Revolt, right? And he had that rope with the knots in it to tell them how many days before they were going to revolt. That was a message. That was documentation. That was a way to pass things on. So documentation has been around for a while for our people. So when we talk about previous documentation as far as like contemporary things, some of you may be familiar with what you see on the screen here. All right. So Jesuit missionaries came over, at least in the Northeast, and they come from literate countries, so they have their journals and they're writing just everything that they see. And you can go back and look in all these Jesuit dictionaries to have a look back at how our societies operated back then, what the language was like back then, what the customs and traditions were in those times. So a lot of them, they just wrote what they saw. They also learned our languages. So some of those old documents, you can find them in our languages. One of the big things that they did back in the day, one of the easiest ways to convert our people to Christianity is to take your language and convert the Bible into your language. I used to look up languages online back in the day when the internet was kind of just starting. Maybe it was probably 5 or 6 years in. But one of the things you could always find in any language was the Lord's Prayer. You know, if I looked up Nez Perce language, I might not find all these resources, but this one page always came up, and it had the same graphic every time. And it was the Lord's Prayer in Nez Perce. And I look up again, and it's in another version of a language. So that was one of the easiest ways for them to do that, was to convert it into the Bible with our languages. And you can find old Bibles in the language, and there's a lot of people who have used old Bibles to revive their languages. The Wampanoag are a good example of that, where their speakers passed away. That's one of the main sources of where they got their language back, was by old Bibles. So this other one here, you see wax cylinders. That was another way to record audio back in the day. The limitations were you could only record about a few minutes at a time. So it's good, like, you can get stuff from those wax cylinders from back in the day, how people used to speak our languages. They're just so limited. And today's technology has allowed us to digitize those formats. But again, the limits of the amount you could record, you could only do so much with those. But we have those. You have the reel-to-reel recorders here. Some of you may have seen those. You know, in our community back in the day, I'm not sure what happened. There's a line where it became taboo to really like record stuff, but those old people, a couple generations back, for whatever reason, they saw something, they saw a need to record. And they would bring these whole things into our longhouse and record people doing speeches for themselves, you know. But I think this is before you could put us stuff on SoundCloud and YouTube and just like give it to the whole world, right? You know. But this was one of the ways that they recorded things. And to be honest, if those speakers hadn't recorded some of those things that were going on, we would have lost a lot of stuff too. So it was a really big benefit for them to do those recordings. And then you have the standard like tape recorder, and some of you might have seen like the little tiny tape recorders, right? To do interviews and stuff. Those are limited. I mean, you can record more and the audio quality is a bit higher. But once CDs came along and other technology came, it kind of overtook tapes. I still have some tapes and tape player, but you can digitize all those. So these are some of the examples of more modern but old documentation, I guess. So when we talk about what's going on today with current documentation and the ways you can document language, you have all these apparatuses at your disposal, right? So digital recorders, you can just record such a higher quality recordings of your speakers, of your users. They take up a little bit more space, but everything's digital now. I see everybody on their computers, their iPads, their telephones. You can load it up to a cloud and you can stream it right down to yourself and listen to tracks from the internet. When I form our classes, I just have a folder, and when I need to, I just share it to the people that need to share it, and they can use it whenever they want, download it to their phone. So digital recordings are a big thing, and you can just increase the quality of your work. There's a whole bunch of other stuff too, like what kind of mics to buy, how to set up your room, all that sound checking stuff. You want to have good quality recordings if you're going to be doing those these days. Notebooks are still relevant today. And actually, notebooks have advanced quite a bit in the way you can use them now. They have notebooks you can buy where you can write it and take a picture of it, and it'll make a PDF for you. And then you can stick, like when you use up that whole notebook, you can stick it in the microwave, and it'll erase all the stuff on the pages. And you can use the notebook all over again. They have notebooks like that. I have digital notebooks that come with a certain kind of pen. I don't know if you guys have seen those. You have that big, thick pen, and it has a microphone on it, and it has a little hard drive on there. And let's say somebody's doing a lecture in the language or something. I can record what they're saying while I write my notes, and it has special paper. You can go back when you listen to that recording. Maybe they're talking about their creation story, and you can go and touch the certain part on the paper where they talked about it, and the recording will go right to where they were talking about it. So you can listen to that off of the pen. The pen has a little speaker and everything. You can take it a step further. Like you can do this with your note features on your tablets and computers now as well. But it's a nifty little feature. If you want the hard copy and you still like writing with the pen on paper, that's an avenue you can pursue to record and document your speakers when you're working with them. It's really nifty how you can do a lot of stuff with that. So I had a friend do a presentation, and I'm going to kind of hijack some of the ideas she talked about. When you're using notebooks, they have all these different kinds of papers now you can use too. They have this really fade-resistant paper you can use. She recommends using a ballpoint pen for everything. Pencil is great if that's all you have, but when the pages just rub together a little bit, it starts to fade your documents. So use a ballpoint pen. I guess I'll get to her point in a second here. So we have this other thing she showed us was Google Sheets. I don't know if anybody uses Google Sheets. It's universal because whether you use a Mac or a PC, you can still use Google Sheets. And what she did is she used that to create a lexicon. So a lexicon is just your list of words. So if you sit with a speaker, and maybe I would think most of you have a dictionary of your language available to you, whether it's a hard copy or a digital copy. But a dictionary doesn't always have everything that you need. New words, Pat was talking about coining new words yesterday, come along. We want our language to stay relevant and updated. There's other things where there are old words and expressions that maybe weren't asked back in the day when they made the dictionary. So you can create this lexicon on Google Sheets. And what she does is she had us, we document the word, we document the literal meaning of what it is. We document in another box what's the figurative meaning, what's it actually saying, what's the context. Maybe we're talking about a hockey game, or we're talking about a ceremony. It could be something very formal or something very informal. You put in who's the speaker, who did you get this from, what's the date, when did you collect this information. You can put a recording on the Google Sheet to hear the word that they said. And then you can put a little timestamp on to say, okay, if you click on 2 minutes and 45 seconds, this is where you can hear that word. So there's so much stuff you can do with this lexicon that when you sit with elders and you just start plugging things into that lexicon, you start building this list of words you can use. And it's right on your phone. You can look up words if you, what was that word they said the other day? I never heard that before. It's right there. You can search it. The other thing too with the Google Sheets is there's other software you can take with Google Sheets and import all of your entries from Google Sheets, and it'll make a dictionary for you. It'll alphabetize everything for you. It's really intuitive. She showed us how she did it, and it was crazy. You can have your own little mini dictionaries that you want just from using Google Sheets, and they're shareable. So the other thing that people are using these days is Elon software, transcription software. I just found out about Elon maybe about 6 months ago. You can take your recordings of your speakers, and they have WAV files, and you can cut up those WAV files. So maybe they have a little section where they talk about something. You can cut up that little part, and you can play it over and over and over, and then you can write down what they're saying in the language. And then you can make these tiers. So you have like these levels, right? Up here's the recording. Down here is the translation or the language. You wrote the language part of it. Down here is the English of what they said. The next level, it depends however detailed you want to be. Some people really like linguistics. So you can do like a linguistic background breakdown. This is a particle, this is a noun, this is a classifier. All these different things you want to do with the language, you can put that on a tier. And you can make another tier down here to talk about just exactly what it's saying. In simple terms, in layman's terms, it's saying. There's so many levels you can create with Elon. And the other thing too with the wave patterns, we all have these little subtleties in our language. These little things you got to have a good ear to hear if you're listening. And if you don't hear it and you don't say it, it can change what you're saying, right? You have words in your language that are really close. And if you say it one way, it means this. You say it this other way, it means something else. People have gotten so good with Elon software and reading those wave files, they can recognize these sound patterns in the wave file. So we have aspirated H's and glottal stops. So like our word for corn, or egg, sa. Sa. So some people hear sa when they hear that word. And if you know that there's an aspirated H in there, and you can recognize it on the wave pattern, you can correct a lot of things yourself just looking at the wave pattern. People actually get good enough to recognize the waves on the transcript. So you can correct a lot of stuff and you don't have to do a lot of the guesswork if you get really good with this. So Elon is one of the big things that people are starting to use these days to take a lot of the recordings we already have available and make them so that we can use them in our language classes. Okay. Everybody who's able to again, deswadat. Okay. With your right hand, thumbs up. With your left hand, point your finger. All right. Now, what I want you to do is make this hand do what this hand does. You're going to switch, all right? Just like this. Now, if you got it, switch it back. So you can't do this, and you can't be like this. And you can't point your finger up. Switch it back one more time. And what you want to be able to do is just switch them back and forth like this. Out. Okay, so that is called a cross-lateral. It makes your left brain and your right brain communicate with each other. It's the same thing when you do the whole whatever, right? That's the same thing. So this is what a lexicon sheet looks like. Again, we have a date, we have the word, we have a translation, literal translation. Everything I just talked about, this is you're putting it into a spreadsheet. Anybody who's used Microsoft Excel, it works pretty much the same. It's just a matter of going in and documenting. So what my friend said, her name's Deyuntqua, do all the work up in the front. So if you're collecting words and you're sitting with speakers, when you're done with those speakers, put those words in right away. That way you don't have to go back to your notebook and start, oh man, I got like 20 pages of stuff I got to put in this, lexicon. Do it right away. And you just have this rolling dictionary of collection of words you've gotten from them that you can use at your disposal. But that's what the Google Sheets look like. So why is documentation important? This is an elder out in California who, I think she passed away just in the past year. You can look her up on Language Keepers. Language Keepers. They have videos that they documented out in California of 4 nations, and you can watch these little mini documentaries. Her name was Marie Wilcox. She was the last first language speaker of her nation. And she was creating a dictionary. So she used to use a old typewriter. And she said, I'm a pecker. She just did that. So she was trying to save her language. And she got a little group of people going with her family. And like I said, she passed away, maybe it was a couple years ago now. But I show the video of this to my class. Every year we have an adult class. Every now and then we'll take a break from class and I'll just show them a video from another community. And the good thing about seeing these documentation and these videos of other communities is you notice that you're not alone in your journey, in your language journey. Whether you're a teacher, a learner, an advocate for your language, an administrator, you can see what other people are doing in their communities, and they're dealing with a lot of the same things you're dealing with. And it makes it a little less lonely. It gets you out of the bubble, So that's who she is, and I just kind of put her on here because my class really got attached to her. So ne deongwai was twaston. It's shrinking on us. E was like our issues or our matters. It can be our language. So it's shrinking on us. So that's a word that one of our elders said a long time ago. He actually recorded a funeral speech for us, the funeral address, the rights to send somebody home. Because in his head, what he saw in our community was that nobody was learning these things anymore. And so he recorded it. And that's one of the things he said in there, Deongwai was twaston, like it's shrinking on us, our ways. So why is it important? In the past 60 years, we've lost so many languages, they've gone silent. And according to the statistics, UNESCO, 6% of all world languages are endangered. So can anybody give me a figure on like how many world languages there are in general? 3,000? 6,000? 15? It's about 7,000. It's about 7,000, give or take. All right? So if you go on the ILIS site, like ILIS does this, and that video is a bit old, right, where we talked about vibrant languages, even in North America. I think at that time there were 20 vibrant languages that are spoken by all levels, from the kids all the way to the elders. So our languages are under attack. Languages are disappearing and going silent. And you guys all feel the pressure. So I used to work up the road at Santa Fe Indian School, and I worked with a lot of the students from the area, from this region. A lot of teachers are natives from this area, from this region, and maintained friendships over the years. I always admired how strong the language has been maintained out here. I always wonder, like, man, how did you guys resist like colonization? And you had a different, like, we got hit from the east, but you guys got hit from the south when the Spanish came, and they were pretty brutal. But you guys held on to your language really strong through even through boarding schools and everything. Like, you could go through and see how strong the language is. I remember going to Santa Fe Indian School my senior year and hearing people speak Tiwa, Towa, Karis, Dene in the hallways, at lunchtime, on the basketball court, coaching youth and hearing them speak their languages. So it was really strong. But the reality is today, in the communities, and some of you know it, the children aren't speaking the language anymore. Even the younger parents aren't speaking the language anymore. You have two people who can speak the language who choose to speak English to each other rather than speak the language. That's a reality that's happening in historically strong language communities. So that reality is there. And if that's happening, then you have to start looking for what is the future of your language. I can't remember the title of the book, but that was the quote: "We stand to lose more languages in the next 30 years than since the history of contact." I'm not trying to paint a doom and gloom, but to create an urgency that we got to do everything we can. And actually, I don't think I have to sell any of you guys on that. You're already here. You're already doing the work. It's how do I inspire you to inspire other people to care as much as you do, right? Nobody's going to care about our languages as much as we do. So we take that into account. But the next step is, how do you inspire other people? So one of the things I always do within my work is I always try to see what other people are doing, people that are good at what they do. And it doesn't have to just be language. If they're a good author, if they're a good actress, if they're a really great dancer or an athlete, what is their mindset to be good at what they do? And how do I tap into that mindset to be good at what I do? As a language instructor, as a language learner, as a language advocate, you can always learn from other people who are really good at what they do. There's some really cool motivational speeches online with just business people. It's so crazy. They don't just become millionaires overnight. They put in a lot of work to do what they do. And you can learn a lot from that. So I'll share one of the people that I do get inspiration from is Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant passed away. I think everybody knows who Kobe was in the NBA. But that was one of his lasting messages was, greatness is not what you have done. It's not what you have accomplished. Greatness is inspiring others to want to be great, who in turn want to inspire others to be great. that everything that you guys do in your life doesn't live and die just with you. It carries on with others. So if you think, like, you guys are here for a reason, right? You guys are here. You have a big reason why you're here. It's not just to play golf out at the links, right? I mean, maybe it is, but somebody inspired you to be here. I want you to just close your eyes for a second. Close your eyes for a second, and I want you to think of the person or the people that are the reason why you're here and who you're doing this for. It could be somebody who's passed away, somebody you knew earlier in your life. It can be the people who are younger than you, and you want them to have what you had. You have a reason why you're here. So we're in a transition too. That's a reality. If I just point to myself, it won't always be me doing the work. And same thing for you. It won't always be you doing the work. The way the Creator made it for us is we're all only here for a little bit of time. We're all visiting here for a little bit of time. And all the things that He put down here on the earth, it's our responsibility to enjoy what He placed down here for us. But we're all only here for a certain amount of time. It won't always be you. So we're in this transition across Native America. A lot of our first language speakers, the way you grew up, how you grew up in a household where everybody spoke the language, a community where everybody spoke the language, that's not common for everybody anymore. So Dr. Richard Littlebear said in one of his presentations a while ago, he said, the conditions that allowed us to become first language speakers do not exist anymore today. And that's the reality. So I do believe, yes, it begins in the home. The language does begin in the home. But I talked with some of my colleagues the other day, and they said, it's not in our homes anymore. We didn't grow up speaking the language, so it's almost like me saying, okay, everybody start speaking Russian in your house tomorrow. It begins in the home. Start speaking Russian tomorrow. And nobody ever taught you Russian, right? And that's how a lot of us are with our languages. We don't get it like that anymore. Nobody in my family used to speak the language. So not my mom, not anybody that we hung out with spoke the language. I had to take this on my own. And a lot of people these days have to take it on their own. I'm fortunate enough at where I work now, we have a full-fledged language program. But that's not the same for everybody. But we're in this transition. So for you elders, first language speakers, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, when they're older, what do you want to tell them? What do you want them to know about you? What do you want them to know about who you are as a people and what it was like when you were growing up? What do you want them to know about your elders when you were a kid? What did your grandma teach you and your great-grandma? And how do you pass that forward to the next generation? I say this because as we try to do documentation with things, we have speakers who are very adamant that they don't want to be recorded. They don't want you to write the notes. They don't want you to do anything with that. And at times, I tell this to everybody, whether, you're a first language speaker or you're a second language learner, the language is bigger than all of us. The language is older than all of us. No matter how old you are, that language is older than you. No matter what title you hold, the language is bigger than you are. It's bigger than all of us. So people always talk about, right, when you're learning your language, you get to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself. And that's what it is. But sometimes we take it upon ourselves and say, well, it's about me. I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't want to do this. And you're making it about you instead of the future. So the future of the language is about the future generations. So one of the speakers that's going to be speaking tomorrow, Patrick Warito, that's what I heard him say too. It's not about now, it's about the future of our languages. And we talked a little bit at NIEA. They said some of these people, they have this Last of the Mohicans complex where I am the last speaker. We're the final speakers, and we're going to take it with us. We're going to be the last ones. There's people like that. And there's a lot of things that we have, right? So sometimes they'll say something like money. You can't take it with you. You can't take all these other things with you. But there is one thing you first language speakers can take with you. That language, if you don't share it before it's your time. There's so many things that can be shared and documented for future generations. So we're in this transition. Okay. Everybody knows how to snap your fingers, right? Okay. So this is one of the things you're going to do. This is the first thing you're going to do. You're going to snap your fingers. All right. The next thing you're going to do is you're just going to do this little pitter-patter on your lap. Okay. And then when I give you the high sign again, you're going to do like a harder pitter-patter. Okay. So this area of the room, I'm going to go through twice. Okay. So I'll go through, and then I'm going to go through again, and I'll go through the third time. We're going to start with the finger snaps. Okay. So over here. Keep it going. Let's do the little pitter-patter. Just the light one over here. Keep it going. Keep it going. Keep it going. Now let's go for the rumble. Over here. Over here. Keep it going. There we go. Nate Hosong. That's one little thing you guys can do if you work together. That took the whole room to get in on the whole thing. Lateral oppression is a real thing in our communities. We don't work together sometimes. We're on different pages. Sometimes we need to put all those things aside and say, this is what I always say, the language is always up here. When my students are fighting, when my staff is fighting, some of you who are directors might know it's really crazy to try to manage adults. I vent to my daughter, and she knows that we have kids at our school too. She goes, wait, are you talking about the kids or the adults? This is one of the biggest things you guys we gotta really focus on. Child vocabulary. The way we teach our language classes, the way we interact with each other as adults is not the way we interact with kids. I mean, to a degree you do. But I was sitting with the people from Tama yesterday during lunch. I was teaching the kids, we were going through animals. And one of the kids just stops, and she's a pre-K at that time. I'm teaching her animals, and she just stops and goes, you have hair hanging out of your nose. I don't know how to say that, How do you say that in your language? If you're a little kid, right? How do you say, you have hair hanging out of your nose? What's the word in your language to say that? They talk about so many other things. One of them came in and they said, I was sick last night, and I threw up, and it was green. And the other girl comes up, she goes, mine was blue the other day. And then all of a sudden, before you knew it, there's like 5 girls telling all their puke stories from whenever. Okay? So us adults aren't going to get together and say, hey, let's tell our puke stories, in the language. But with little kids, you have to be able to say anything and everything, right? Lance Twitchell out of Alaska, he said, I asked the elders, how do you say wipe your butt? And they said, you don't have to say that. We don't talk like that. He said, well, I have a little kid, and sometimes he doesn't wipe his butt after he goes to the bathroom. So I kind of need to know how to say that. There's an Ojibwe podcast called The Language. And one of the ladies on there, she said, I never thought I would have to learn the verb, to pee on somebody. She said, then I had a little boy, and I got peed on every day by my little boy. So even that, right? It's just a simple thing. Man, I was changing his diaper the other day, and then everything was all ready, and then he peed on my arm, that's a thing. That happens. Little kids, there's so many other vocab words you use just with kids but if you don't give the context, to a speaker, they're like, hey, we don't talk like that. It seems taboo. There's so much to capture in child vocab that you need. Even when Chris was talking about the game, there's so many little things in the interaction of the game. That's all vocab we got to try to capture. So, what time do I have till? 10 more minutes. All right. So this is my email. I could say Onondawaga, but Onondawaga is Seneca. So one of the biggest things I always try to do is work with other programs. We have other people who want to come visit our program out in Tonawanda. If you want to come out to Western New York, set it up. We'll host you guys and you can come see what we do. But networking is big. And Ine talked about it the other day, is try to sit with other people. Everybody you came with, you're going to see them when you get back home. So documentation is very important. We are constantly adding more stuff to our lexicon, working with the elders, getting everything we can while they're here. We only have so much time left with our elders. In my community, we have one first language speaker, but we can never get a hold of him. And then we have another one who is a fluent understander. So she'll tell you if what you said was correct, if it sounds right, but you can't ask her how to say stuff. She just won't do it. She's not built like that. So basically, we're all heading towards this line where everything's going to shift over to the second language learners at some point. It's just going to be you. I have colleagues sitting in here. We know that time is coming. We're trying to make ourselves the best Seneca language speakers we can be, so that when that time comes, and it's such a big responsibility to think of, it will all be on our shoulders. We won't have anybody. I remember hearing an elder, he said, I used to have people that I could look back and ask to. And as they started to pass away, I look back and there's nobody to ask anymore. And now everybody's looking back at me for all the answers, And that's what my friend Deyuntquat said about legacy. Even all you people who are young, whether you're 20s, 30s, 40s, still relatively younger, she said, you're going to be an ancestor someday. That's just the way it is. You're going to be an ancestor someday as well. So when she talked about legacy and we talk about documentation, she said, let's play it out. You've passed away. They're cleaning out your house. They come across your notebooks, your recordings, all your stuff. How useful is your documentation? And I really thought about that. If my daughters go through all my stuff, that when that day comes, how useful are my documents going to be for the people who need them? Maybe they find all my notes and they just go to Tonawanda and say, hey, these were all my dad's notes. These are all the things he wrote in his classes, for his classes. Maybe you guys can use these. Maybe they want to take it upon themselves to teach their children someday. Are my notes useful? Are my recordings useful? Because someday you'll be an ancestor. And that's the legacy you leave in the documentation, so that the future generations can use it and carry our language into the future. Because that's what we all want, right? We're talking about a 50-year plan for our languages. Before they mentioned that, I had never actually thought about 50 years. I got a 5-year plan and I got a 10-year plan. I heard one class do a 30-year plan. But a 50-year plan, even at me, so I'm 48 years old. Average lifespan of our native guys is like mid to late 60s. So if I'm lucky, if I'm super lucky, I'll live another 50 years. But I don't think the next 50 years is going to be, in 50 years, I don't think I'll be here. So what can I do between now and then to build something as much as I can? And I was at the KCLC, if you guys know KCL, Caris Children's Learning Center up in Cochiti Pueblo. They had a conference last November. Tricia Mokino, she was talking about that. She just moved me. She said, when my days are done and my time is up, I want to say I did everything I could for my language and for my people. And that just spoke to me right here. I want to know I did everything I could for my language. And I hope you guys feel that too, for the future generations. So I'm just going to say that much today. Nate Wai, Nane de Guanonio, Nane Eastwait, and Ganwani Sadit. Nate Wai, Nane, Guista, Nane, Ongiant Hik, Nandana Od Git, and Ganwani Sadit. Nate Wai, Nane de Guanonio, Dane Honeo, Dog Nane on Guatni Guant. Thank you for your time, everybody.